From the two black men killed by police in Louisiana and Minnesota to the attack on police officers in Dallas, it has been one tragic event after another this week. Emotions are running high all over the country, and knowing how to cope can be difficult. So joining us this morning is clinical psychologist Dr. Sheela with a look at how the tragedies impact all of us. When this happened this week, I remember sitting at the television stunned. Just stunned, absolutely. Every shooting, then the police shooting, and it just seems like it's one thing after another. And that's why we brought you in here today, because we feel like everybody's having kind of a tough week, you know? So I guess the question is, how does it affect us, and how do we cope with it?
Right. I mean, it's so normal right now for us to feel helpless and angry and overwhelmed and anxious about all of the things that we've gone through. And our first instinct is usually to isolate ourselves, right? But this is not the time to do that. If at all possible, try to get out, get to know your neighbors that are different than you. You know, if they're different, even better.
Sure.
That's healing for us. And then, you know, if you have the energy, try to organize in your community, reach out to police officers in your community. But this is the time for us to build bridges and not build walls.
And I know that sometimes kids see this stuff sort of in passing. They may not know what's going on. They may not even be with their parents when this news breaks.
Right.
How do you talk to your kids about something so deadly?
Right. And some communities have had to have these conversations from the get-go, right?
Right.
And some of us have been lucky we can isolate our kids from these types of things. But we can't do that anymore. Now that we have, you know, all these cell phone cameras everywhere, we know there's a problem. And that's a good thing, because now we can all get together to try to solve it, which means, one, I think talking to your kids about how we all have biases. Usually, you know, we look at people different than us, and it's totally normal to go, oh, you're not like me. But we also have to work on not acting on those things. And we can't work on that unless we acknowledge that we all have those. And we've got to talk about, you know, the legacy of slavery and racism with our kids. You know, I'm here as the child of immigrants talking to you. That's awesome. That's a great thing. But there's ugly parts that we have to talk about too, and even preschoolers understand the concept of fairness.
Right.
Fairness.
You're absolutely right. During times like this, we're seeing a lot of protests around the country. Is that a coping mechanism, and why do people protest? What is it about that emotional charge that brings people out?
Well, activism is a great way to cope with feelings of helplessness and anger. But the other thing we have to try to figure out is, behind that, do we have a spark of hopefulness within us? And can we build on that in terms of getting to know people that are different, building coalitions, and finding solutions? Because we can't stay in, you know, helplessness and anger. We've got to move to the hopefulness at some point to be able to find solutions.
And I'll be the last person to tell people to turn off the television, but sometimes that helps. Sometimes it's too much.
I agree. Yes, absolutely. If you're watching it again and again and again, and you know, some of us, if you know that there's a problem already, you don't have to watch the footage of those murders. It's too much.
Dr. Sheela, thank you for coming in this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll have a link to more information on how to cope and talk to your kids on our website, cbschicago.com, coming up a little bit later on this morning.